Good evening, I'm Kimilia and this is KiniNews. Annuar Musa has shared his views on Umno being ready to accept leaders and members who were removed after the last general election. Let's take a look at what he said. Former BN Secretary General Annuar Musa has questioned the relevance of returning to Umno. In a statement last night, Annuar said it was up to the individual and there are many different options. He said the bottom line is that they need to ask themselves why they would support a party that is clearly damaged by its leaders, irrelevant and rejected by the public. Annuar also claimed that currently Umno is neither democratic nor rational. He said it is not surprising that the party is now acting as a device to shield its current leaders, as it is no longer clear who is in charge and who is the friend or enemy. With the party no longer what it used to be, Annuar said it is no wonder that many of its divisions have been abandoned, failed, or refused to hold meetings. He noted that millions of party supporters had also changed their allegiance during the general election. Annuar's statement came after Umno Supreme Council member Jalaluddin Alias said the party was ready to accept leaders and members who were removed after the last general election. Jalaluddin said the party was willing to offer a second chance to leaders and members who remain loyal and still believe in the party struggle. A DAP leader has come to the defense of Hannah Yeoh over a Selangor government contract being awarded to her husband's company. Ching said calls for Hannah to resign is unfair. Deputy Communications Minister Ching said calls for Youth and Sports Minister Hannah Yeoh to resign over a government contract awarded to her husband's company are unfair. In a press conference today, she thinks Yeoh will cooperate with any type of investigation. She said the question is whether it is appropriate for Yeoh to resign and thinks that it is too early. She said this in response to the call by United for the Rights of Malaysians Party Chairperson P. Ramazami for Yeoh to resign over the issue. Yeoh also questioned the timing of Ramazami's resignation call. She asked why the former Penang Deputy Chief Minister too for 15 years did not make the same call when former Penang Chief Minister Lim Guan Eng was charged in court. Previously, Ramazami had called for Yeoh to resign as minister over the contract for a demand-responsive transit pilot project being awarded to Asia Mobility Technologies Sendirian Berhad. Yeoh's husband Ramachandran Muniandi is the company's CEO. Yesterday, the MACC explained it had conducted an interim investigation regarding the issue but did not find any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, a former Umno leader has urged the government not to take the issue lightly. He warned that it may create a negative perception of the government. Former Umno Supreme Council member Isham Jalil urged the government not to take the issue of Asia Mobility Technologies Sendirian Berhad lightly. He said this is as it may create a negative perception among the public. Elaborating, he said under the law there is a phrase called undue influence. He said though the minister may not be involved in the tender process, it may create a negative perception of the government. Isham said if the government is seen as practicing cronyism and nepotism, people would be skeptical about paying taxes as the money would be seen as going into the pockets of those connected to the administration. He said even investors will flee and that is why the government must be seen as whiter than white. He said this is especially so when the present leaders are the ones who promise to eradicate cronyism, nepotism and corruption. Isham added that it will look like they changed after attaining power or perhaps they were like that from the beginning but lied their way to power. Isham was referring to Asia Mobility being awarded a contract by the Selangor government. Questions were raised because the company's CEO is Ramachandran Muniandi, the husband of Youth and Sports Minister Hannah Yeoh. Last Friday, Selangor State Executive Councillor Ng Han said two companies, which included Asia Mobility, were selected for a demand-responsive transit project and were chosen after a thorough process. If you'd like access to news like this and more, subscribe now to Malaysia Kini and support independent media. Moving on, Bersatu's Wan Saiful has claimed that Najib is better than Anwar when it comes to press freedom. He said this in response to Anwar's remarks on the matter earlier this week. Bersatu Supreme Council member Wan Saiful Wanjan has claimed that former Prime Minister Najib Abdul Razak was better than Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim when it comes to press freedom. In a post on Facebook yesterday, Wan Saiful said both Najib and Anwar viewed press freedom as not absolute, but at least Najib spoke with substance. Wan Saiful said Anwar was repeating what Najib had said, however, Najib is better because in 2018 he said press freedom needed to be based on three things, namely responsibility, publishing based on truth, growth and following the interpretation of local image and culture. Meanwhile, he said Anwar had said he didn't care without outlining any meaningful content. One Saiful also claimed that Anwar's reference to 3R issues was a diversion tactic as a distraction from his failure to manage the country's economy and sociopolitics. He said media freedom in Malaysia is in a critical and severe state, and this was due to Pakatan Harapan's false promises of freedom for the press. Earlier this week, in his speech during the National Journalists' Day summit in Kuching, Sarawak, Anwar defended the government's tough action against inflammatory speeches, which had indirectly contributed to Malaysia's downgrade in the annual Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index. Dr. Mahathir's sons have been granted another extension to declare their assets. Azam Baki said their lawyers had been in contact with the MACC on the asset declaration period. The MACC has granted an extension to Moghzani Mahathir and his brother Mirzan to declare their assets. MACC Chief Commissioner Azam Baki said the lawyers for Mirzan and Moghzani had been in contact with the MACC investigating officers regarding the asset declaration period. However, he did not disclose the extension period. He said the MACC has already set the deadline for them to declare their assets and reached an agreement on that matter. On January 18th, Mirzan and Moghzani were served with a notice under Section 36(1)(b) of the MACC Act 2009, requiring them to declare all movable and immovable assets in their possession. On May 24th, a local news portal reported that Mirzan and Moghzani have applied to the MACC to extend the deadline for the duo to declare their assets after being granted an extension earlier. It was also reported that Moghzani is being investigated under the MACC Act 2009 and the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001. A minister has urged the public not to make any speculations on the rise in goods prices. This came following the implementation of diesel subsidy rationalization. Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Minister Armizan Mohammad Ali has urged all quarters not to make any speculation on the rise in goods prices following the implementation of diesel subsidy rationalization. Armizan told Malaysia Kini that in fact, the actual date of implementation has yet to be decided by the government. He added that the government would announce their strategy later on. Armizan said this when asked for comments on the government's assurance that prices of other goods will not increase following the implementation of subsidy rationalization. Previously, Malaysia Kini reported that Malaysians have expressed their concerns over the rise in prices of goods following the government's plan to implement targeted diesel fuel subsidies. Meanwhile, Deputy Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Minister Fuzia Saleh said the people need not worry about the government's announcement. She asserted that the speculation that there will be a surge in the price of goods is baseless. The government, she said, has identified 23 types of vehicles that will receive diesel subsidies. Fuzia added that her ministry will monitor and take action should any quarter attempt to take advantage of the subsidy rationalization. She said the government has a mechanism to control every increase in goods prices under the Price Control and Anti-Profiteering Act. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim had previously said that the government will continue to subsidize diesel for 10 types of public transport and 23 types of vehicles used to transport goods to curb a sudden increase in prices of goods and services. That is all from me today. For more stories, you can go to Kinitv.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook for the latest news updates. If you would like to support independent media, do consider subscribing to MalaysiaKini.com. I'm Kimilia. Thanks for watching.